It would mean living the rest of his life as a Hi there, my name is Mr. Pete. I am a fourth grade teacher, currently reading Louis Sachar's Holes, and we are reading chapter 42. We left off in 41 finding out the big news that Zero stole the sneakers. That Stanley got arrested for stealing. So we know Stanley can, if he says that to somebody, we know that Stanley can get out of jail, or in this case, Camp Green Lake. Zero is getting stronger. They are good friends, so I don't know that Stanley is the kind of person who would turn his friend in, but I do think Zero is the kind of person that will admit that he's the kid who actually stole those sneakers. Now, getting back to camp and admitting that and having the warden and Mr. Sir and Mr. Pendanski go along with it, they're a whole other story. So let's jump into chapter 42 and find out where we go from here. They have a well brewing here for water. They have onions that they're living off of, so they're feeling better. Zero apparently has turned the corner and is getting better and better with his own onion tonic. And let's see where we go from here. Chapter 42. Zero became strong enough to help dig the hole, so he's getting a lot better. When he finished, it was over 6 feet deep. He filled the bottom with rocks to help separate the water from the dirt. So he's creating a filter, and our earth actually has a layer of rock. So when you have a lot of snow, like is here in town, or when it rains a lot, that water seeps into the ground, and those rocks that are above, or clay, that heavy mass actually filters the water really well until it gets into the groundwater and eventually flows to wherever it flows to. In our case, we live in the Lake Erie Basin, so all of our water likely heads to Lake Erie, whether it's through the river or through the groundwater. So here they're building their own filter and cleaning their own water because, of course, they've been drinking water with a lot of dirt in it. So this will help that process a little bit. He was still the best hole digger around. "That's the last hole I will ever dig," he declared, throwing down the shovel. Stanley smiled. He wished it were true, but he knew they had no choice but to eventually return to Camp Green Lake. They couldn't live on onions forever. They had been completely around Big Thumb. It was like a giant sundial. Simile, comparing Big Thumb to a sundial. Sundials are really cool. We talked about them briefly in one of the blocks, but sundials are the old, like, wristwatches, except for they weren't very portable unless you watched the Flintstones. And if you don't know who the Flintstones are, you should look them up. But what would happen is as the sun would travel, it would cast a shadow at a certain point, and those certain points would tell you what time of day it was. So they're comparing Big Thumb to a sundial so they could tell time. They followed the shade. They were able to see out in all directions. There was no place to go. The mountain was surrounded by desert. Zero stared at Big Thumb. "Must have a hole in it," he said, "filled with water." "You think? Where else could the water be coming from?" Zero asked. "Water doesn't run uphill." Stanley bit into an onion. It didn't burn his eyes or nose, and, in fact, he no longer noticed a particularly strong taste. He remembered when he had first carried Zero up the hill, how the air had smelled bitter. It was the smell of thousands of onions growing and rotting and sprouting. Now he didn't smell a thing. So where are they right now? This onion field. We know about someone who had an onion field from the past, who lived across the lake. "How many onions do you think we've eaten?" he asked. Zero shrugged. "I don't even know how long we've been here." "I'd say about a week," said Stanley, "and we probably each eat about 20 onions a day, so that's 280 onions," said Zero. Stanley smiled. I bet we really stink. 2 nights later, Stanley lay awake, staring up at the star-filled sky. He was too happy to fall asleep. He's at Camp Green Lake. He escapes. He's in the middle of nowhere. He's only eating onions. He's only drinking this dirty water. Why is he happy? He knew he had no reason to be happy. He had heard or read somewhere that right before a person freezes to death, he suddenly feels nice and warm. He wondered if perhaps he was experiencing something like that. It occurred to him that he couldn't remember the last time he felt happiness. It wasn't just being sent to Camp Green Lake that had made his life miserable. Before that, he'd been unhappy at school, where he had no friends, and bullies like Derek Dunn picked on him. No one liked him, and the truth was, he didn't especially like himself. He liked himself now. He wondered if he was delirious. Highlight delirious? It's crazy. He looked over at Zero sleeping near him. Zero's face was lit in the starlight, and there was a flower petal in front of his nose that moved back and forth as he breathed. It reminded Stanley of something out of a cartoon. Zero breathed in, and the petal was drawn up, almost touching his nose. Zero breathed out, and the petal moved towards his chin. It stayed on Zero's face for an amazingly long time before fluttering off to the side. Stanley considered placing it back in front of Zero's nose, but it wouldn't be the same. It seemed like Zero had lived at Camp Green Lake forever, but as Stanley thought about it now, he realized that Zero must have gotten there no more than a month or two before him. Zero was actually arrested a day later, but Stanley's trial kept getting delayed because of baseball. So Zero got arrested after Stanley, a day after. And then while Stanley was waiting to go to trial because Clyde Livingston had baseball season, Zero went right to trial, was guilty, and then went right to camp while Stanley had to wait a while. And it does make sense because Zero was last in line. We thought it was because he was a zero. Turns out he was last in line because he was the last one to get there. He remembered what Zero had said a few days before. If Zero had just kept those shoes, then neither of them would be here right now. As Stanley stared at the glittering night sky, he thought there was no place he would rather be. He was glad Zero put the shoes on the parked car. He was glad they fell from the overpass and hit him on the head. When the shoes first fell from the sky, he remembered thinking that destiny had struck him. Highlight destiny. Destiny means it was meant to happen. Now he thought so again. It was more than a coincidence. It had to be destiny. It was destiny for him to meet Zero, for him to end up at camp. Wonder if he's right. Maybe they wouldn't have to return to Camp Green Lake, he thought. Maybe they could make it past the camp, then follow the dirt road back to civilization. Highlight civilization, vocabulary word. Civilization means like where people live. They could fill the sack with onions and the 3 jars with water, and he had his canteen as well. They could refill their jars and canteen at the camp, maybe sneak into the kitchen and get some food. He doubted any counselors were still on guard. Everyone had to think they were dead. Buzzard food. It would mean leaving the rest of his life as a fugitive. Highlight fugitive. Vocabulary word. A fugitive is someone who has broken a law and is being chased by the police because they have to go to jail. Fugitive. The police would always be after him. At least he could call his parents and tell them he was still alive, but he couldn't go visit them in case the police were watching the apartment. Although if everyone thought he was dead, they wouldn't bother to watch the apartment. He would have to somehow get a new identity. Now I'm really thinking crazy, he thought. He wondered if a crazy person wonders if he's crazy. Oh, sorry. But even as he thought this, an even crazier idea kept popping into his head. He knew it was too crazy to even consider. Still, if he was going to be a fugitive for the rest of his life, it would help to have some money. Perhaps a treasure chest full of money. Oh, you're crazy, he told himself. Besides, just because he found a lipstick container with KB on it, that didn't mean there was a treasure buried there. It was crazy. It was all part of his crazy feeling of happiness. Or maybe it was destiny. He reached over and shook Zero's arm. "Hey, Zero," he whispered. "Huh," Zero muttered. "Zero, wake up." "What?" Zero raised his head. "What is it?" "You want to dig one more hole?" Stanley asked him. Stanley wants to dig one more hole. Is this the last hole? What hole does he want to dig? Where is he going to go? Make a prediction below. I love this chapter very much. Stanley going back and thinking about just how happy he is, even though he shouldn't be. You know, he's at Camp Green Lake, and like I said before, all of these bad things have happened, and he's now stuck on the mountain in the middle of a desert, eating onions and drinking dirty water. But he's happy. And now he's got an idea where he wants to go dig one more hole. Where do you think that is? Put it in the comments below. And please make sure you subscribe, you like, you hit the bell so you know when my videos come. And please leave comments because I love hearing what everybody thinks about the reading, and I love having wonderful discussions about what's going on. All right, we're going to stop there. Thank you so much. I will see you in the next chapter. I will see you on the next page. Peace.